One of the most transformative practices I've seen with patients and in my own life is to consciously think about death. And before you switch off, right, I want you to listen to this. One of the reasons I think so many of us take life for granted is because we don't truly recognize that we are going to die. The human life, the human experience is finite. And by knowing it's finite, it gives you license to live. Once you truly understand that, it frees you, it liberates you so you can start living your life. I see this all the time with patients. Let's say they get a cancer diagnosis. And of course, this can be really worrying, really scary, a lot of heartache for all concerned. But one thing I've often seen, whether it's cancer or any other condition, is that these serious diagnoses bring life into sharp focus. Suddenly people realize what really is important. What do I want to spend my life doing? I think half the problem, particularly in countries like the UK or America, is that we hide death away from us. It's in our language. People rarely say that person died. It's that person passed. That person passed away. I lost my father. We hide it. And I think that comes at a huge cost. By hiding death, we don't realize that it does apply to all of us. Until my dad died in 2013, I don't think I genuinely felt that death applied to me or my family. It was the first time ever that I experienced death. First time ever I really went through grief. And I realized, wow, death really does happen. People who you love are going to die. This actually isn't morbid. It's actually really, really liberating. You know, I remember as a child, growing up in the UK, the Indian Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, was assassinated. And I can remember sitting around the television with my parents, with my brother, watching her funeral. And I still remember you could see the fire. You could see the body burning. It was there. You knew what it was. And I think societies who grow up with death, seeing death, I think it's really, really powerful. Because I think it gives them license to really live. In fact, a practice that many Buddhist monks participate in is the practice of thinking about death every day. They come to terms with the fact that yes, death is real, it's going to happen. I am mortal. And if I'm being completely honest, if I had heard someone say this to me 10 or 15 years ago, particularly before my dad had died, I'm not sure what I would have thought. But as I get older, as I develop more life experience, as I go through more things, I realize this is a very, very powerful practice. And I kind of think that these days there's a lot of talk about anti-aging. You know, can we reverse aging? Can we live to 120? Can we live to 150? And I do wonder sometimes, are we missing something about the human experience? That we're trying to deny that death is going to happen. But I think we can use death as a way of teaching us, as a way of giving us license to start living immediately. And I get that some people in the anti-aging world are not talking about that. They're simply trying to say, look, instead of being immobile and dependent in your old age, can we do things right now in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, our 60s? Can we do things that mean that we're going to age better? And I'm all for that, but I do think we run the risk of becoming obsessed with anti-aging to the point where we stop actually living. You know, one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had on my podcast was with the palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware. She wrote the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, and her findings have really, really moved me. She basically said to me that people at the end of their lives, when they're on their deathbeds, they kind of tend to say the same things. I wish I'd worked less. I'd wish I spent more time with my friends and family. I wish I'd lived my life and not the lives that other people expected of me. I wish I'd allowed myself to be happy. What's really interesting for me is that these are people who realize these regrets on their deathbeds. But since reading that book, since talking to Bronnie, it's really changed how I approach every single day. I realize that I don't want those regrets. I want to do what's important right now. And that's why so many patients end up coming in to see me. It's because they're taking life for granted. The truly important things in life are only getting fit in when everything else gets done. But these days, our to-do lists are never done. So I've created a very simple exercise. I've done it many times myself. I recommend it to many of my patients that is absolutely transformative. And I call it Write Your Own Happy Ending. So I'd like you to try it right now. Imagine that you are on your deathbeds. Right now, imagine. Look back on your life. What are 3 things you will want to have done? Or what are 3 things you will want to have spent time on? For me, I know my answer because I ask myself this question very regularly. For me, I will want to have spent quality time with my wife and my children. I will want to have done something that improves the lives of other people. And I will want to have had time to pursue my own passions. Those are my 3 things. Relationships, passions, and doing things for other people. The second part of this exercise is in the present day right now. And it's about creating 3 weekly happiness habits. You basically use those deathbed thoughts to create 3 habits that if you did weekly will give you the happy ending that you've just defined you want. Well, if I want those 3 things on my deathbed, what do I have to do in the here and now to get them? Well, one of my weekly happiness habits is I want to have 5 meals with my wife and children where I'm fully present. That's what works for me. It may not work for you. This is a very personal, individual exercise. But for me, in the context of my life, I know if I have 5 meals each week with my wife and kids where I'm not distracted with work, I'm not distracted with emails, I'm going to be fostering and nurturing those relationships. Doesn't mean I won't do anything else, right? But I've been very clear and I specify it and it's on my fridge on a sticky note. The second one of my weekly happiness habits is about recording an episode of my podcast. If I record an episode of my podcast each week and I publish it, as I do and have been doing for over 6 years, well, I know that I'm doing something to improve the lives of others. And the third thing for me is if I have time each week to either go for a long walk in nature or play my guitar and write some songs, then I know I'm finding time for my own passions. This is a really powerful exercise. Do not underestimate how powerful it is because the questions are simple. I challenge you, do both parts of that exercise, either right now or later on today. Maybe encourage other people in your world, your friends, your family, your partner, to do it as well. It brings a real intentionality to your everyday life. And I have my 3 weekly happiness habits written up on the wall. Doesn't mean I can't change them. I can change them over time if I want to. But it means I've got something to aim for each week. I know if I do those 3 things, even if I've got loads left to do, I haven't got through all my emails, I've still got work to get through, I know I'm still winning. I'm still focusing on what's truly, truly important. That exercise has changed my own life, and it's changed the lives of so many of my patients. How much time do you spend on your screen each day? How much time do you spend on your smartphone? So many of my patients come in and they are quite literally addicted to their screens. And often they don't realize the impact those screens are having on their physical health and their mental well-being. In fact, some of the latest research I've seen suggests that actually adults are spending 4 to 5 hours a day on our screens. And for teenagers, it's even more. And there was a study all the way back in 2014 saying that people in the UK back then touched their smartphone over 220 times on any given day. That was almost 10 years ago. It's no doubt going to be higher today. But we kind of know that, don't we? We know we probably look at our screens too much. Of course, sometimes for work we have to. We have to be on a computer all day. But what about when you're not at work? What about when you are in the queue at the coffee shop? What about in the evening when you're with your partner or your family? What about right before bed? Do you have to also be on your screens then? So what are some of the problems with spending so long on our screens? Well, there's a variety of ways you can look at this. There's the impact on us as individuals. What's it doing to us? What's it doing to our physical health, our mental health? What's it doing to our sleep? But we also have to ask ourselves, what is it doing to the quality of our relationships with those people around us? What's the opportunity cost of being on those screens? What might you be doing otherwise? So you've probably heard before that modern technology is addictive. Smartphones are addictive. But the truth is, it's not your fault. If you struggle to put your phone down, it's not your fault. These phones have been designed for that very purpose. I often talk about behavior change. I say, if you want to create a new healthy habit, you've got to make the behavior easy to do. Make it easy, you're going to do it. Make it hard, you probably won't. Well, all of these technology companies understand the principles of human behavior. They know that if they make it easy, you're going to do it. Right? If you're watching Netflix, why does one video go into the next video? Is it out of the goodness of Netflix's heart? No, they're doing what they need to do for their business. They're making it much more likely that before you realize it's 11 p.m. and you've got to be up at 6 a.m. for work, before you realize that, you're already sucked into the next episode. So you stay up for another hour watching it, with a subsequent impact on your sleep, and then your mood, and then your performance the following day. In fact, the Netflix CEO said a few years ago that their biggest competitor was sleep. Just think about that for a minute. Their biggest competitor is sleep, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, one of the reasons why sleep problems just weren't that much of an issue, to the best of our knowledge, 10,000 years ago or so, is because when it was the end of the day, when it got dark, we might have a campfire, we might switch off and relax, talk, exchange stories, dance, be creative, but there wasn't that much else to do. Sleep wasn't competing with screen time. So you would naturally feel tired and fall asleep. Naturally. Whereas actually today, you have to actively make a decision. A lot of us don't realize that the light from our screens is keeping us up. We know that light is a very powerful modulator of what we call our body's circadian rhythm. Think about it. You wake up in the morning, let's say in the summer, you go outside, there's sun there, there's light. That sends a signal to all the cells in your body that it's daytime now. It wakes your body up. It helps to coordinate all of the different clocks in the different cells of your body. But we also need that signal of darkness at night. So for many of us, these screens are keeping us up later. So instead of feeling tired, we actually think, no, I'm not tired yet. But it's the light from those screens that is doing it, but it's also the cognitive stimulation. Instead of winding down and exchanging stories and being with our loved ones, we're often still working. Or we go on social media, we read something negative and get into an argument with someone online. Of course we're going to have trouble sleeping. What about if you watch the news right before bed? If you're someone who struggles with your sleep and you watch the news before bed and you are ruminating in bed and worrying about the state of the world, maybe watching the news last thing at night is not helping you. Why would you infuse that negativity into your brain before you go to sleep? So the reality is, for pretty much all of my patients, reducing their screen time, particularly in the evening, has quite a transformative effect on their physical health and their mental well-being. Now, we're living in a sleep deprivation epidemic, no question about it. Scientists from Oxford University say that we are sleeping 1 to 2 hours less than 60 years ago. We may have lost up to 25% of our sleep. It's absolutely incredible. And what happens when we don't sleep well? What happens to you when you haven't slept well? Are you patient? Are you calm? Are you able to focus? Are you productive? No. You see, when we don't sleep well, so many systems in the body get affected. We have a reduced ability to pay attention. Our focus is down. Our concentration is down. We show less empathy. We're less creative. We eat more. Yeah, that's right, we eat more. The research shows us that if you're sleeping 5.5 hours a night compared to, let's say, 7.5 or 8 hours a night, on average, you eat 22% more calories the following day. So 5 days of sleep deprivation means that you could be eating a whole extra day's worth of calories each week just from sleep deprivation. And that's because of sleep deprivation's effects on the hormones leptin and ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone. Leptin is a satiety hormone. So screens affect us in so many ways. And I can say this to you. You can hear it. You can read a blog. You can read an article. But the problem is, because they're so prevalent and because they're so addictive, so many of us don't make any changes. So what's it going to take for you to start making some changes? What steps are you going to put into place in your life, which mean you're not on your screens as much, particularly in the evenings, because that's going to have a transformative effect on your health, your happiness, and the quality of your relationships. Now, what about screen use in the day? See, one of the things I think that is affecting people the most these days is the fact that our downtime has been eroded out of our lives. We need downtime. Our brains love downtime. Have you ever taken a shower or been in the bath and come up with some of your best ideas? Have you ever gone for a walk and suddenly a problem that you were trying to solve, you've suddenly managed to solve? Well, that's because there's a part of your brain that we call the default mode network, or the DMN, that kicks into gear when you're not focusing on a specific task. And that part of the brain is responsible for all kinds of things. Two of those things are, it helps you be more creative and it helps you solve problems. So one of the big problems these days is because we're so focused on our screens all the time, we take them everywhere with us, we don't allow that part of the brain to kick in. And that's why so many of us come up with our best ideas in the shower, because it's one of the few spaces that are left available to us where we don't take our phones in. So we allow that part of the brain to kick in. It helps you feel less stressed. You're more productive. You feel happier afterwards. Just think, wherever you live, imagine 30 years ago going into one of your local coffee shops. What would be happening? Well, you'd go in, people would be chatting. You might be waiting in a queue. You'd be looking around. You might bump into someone you know. What happens today? Everyone's got their head down. Everyone's looking at their screens. Everyone's trying to take a quick moment, get a few emails done, have a cheeky check on social media. I get it. In isolation, there's nothing wrong with those things. But when you add it into everything that's going on in society and how much we're looking at our screens, it starts to become really toxic, because those are micro moments where you could be switching off. You could be allowing yourself to breathe, your mind to breathe, your brain's default mode network to kick in. But you've got to give it that downtime. So I think our overuse of screens is affecting our sleep, which then is affecting our health and our relationships. But it's also affecting the way our brains work. It's also affecting the levels of stress we feel. That's why I think so many of us feel burnt out and overloaded and overstimulated, because we're not having those little moments of downtime. So how can you start to bring those things in? Look, a few years ago, I had a patient, a 16-year-old chap called Devon, who came in to see me. And it was him and his mum saying, listen, the hospital has asked us to come in so you can prescribe an antidepressant. And it was really interesting to me because I knew this family pretty well. I was totally shocked that this kid had ended up in the emergency room. I spent a lot of time with him that day. I asked him to come back the next day so I could spend longer to really understand what was going on. And of course I did all the checks that I had to do as a medical doctor. But it was really clear to me that there were certain things going on in his life that could be affecting his mental well-being. One of those things was his screen use. So I had a chat with him. And I said, look, would you consider reducing how much time you're spending on your screens each day? And he goes, well, do you think it's going to make a difference? I said, it might do. And so what we started off with was 1 hour before he went to bed in the evening, I said, I want you to go off your screen. No social media, nothing. He said, is that it? I said, yeah, that's all. I'll see you in 7 days. Now, 7 days later, he comes back to see me. And he's starting to feel a difference. Just that simple act alone meant that he was sleeping better. And that's what he said. He said, look, I'm sleeping better. I've got more energy. I generally feel better. Over the next few weeks, I increased that to 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. And again, he's starting to progressively feel better and better. After 4 to 6 weeks, I spoke to him about his diet. And he was having a very modern processed junk food diet. And I said, you're having a lot of blood sugar ups and downs throughout the day. When your blood sugar goes up and then crashes down, that's not just a blood sugar and an energy problem. That's a mood problem, because when your blood sugar crashes, that's a stress signal to the body. That's an alarm sign. That's not helping you. By changing his diet to have more protein and more healthy fats, so in the morning, instead of a sugary cereal bowl, he would have eggs and avocado. He would have olives or nuts to snack on. Just by making those changes, his blood sugar became more stable. These changes completely transformed his life. I didn't see him for a little while after that. And about 6 months after he first came in to see me, I got a letter from his mother saying, Dear Dr Chatterjee, I just want to say thank you. Devon's like a different person. He's happy, he's engaged, he's got friends, he's doing things in his local community at weekends. And it was all down to these changes. That first change was changing his relationship with his screens. Now, I could give you countless stories of other teenagers, other adults, people in middle age, who are also improving their lives when they reset their relationship with their screens. So I'd really encourage you, have a think. Where could you do this? Where can you start to make a change? Could you have some rules at home? That over the dinner table, you're never going to have any screens. That's the rule I have in my house. I'm married, I've got 2 young children. We have a rule. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, when we're eating them, there are no screens or smartphones allowed at the table. Now, if that sounds a bit draconian, think back to 20 years ago. Did you have screens at the dinner table then? No, for the bulk of human history, we didn't. But somehow we've allowed this kind of sacred place, the dinner table, to be infiltrated with screen time, so people are being distracted. This is a massive, massive issue for relationships. I have seen so many patients over the years who tell me that their marriages are under strain. And more times than I can remember, the cause was screen time use in the evenings. I remember one lady who said, look, I try and talk to my husband in the evening. We're sitting in the kitchen after the children have gone to bed, but I can't really talk to him because he keeps looking at his screen. And he says, I've got to do my work emails, but it means that they're physically in the same space together, but emotionally, mentally, they're a million miles away. And actually, really, by them setting some ground rules in place, no screens in the kitchen, if her husband wanted to do some emails, he would go into their study and do it at a laptop. And at the weekends, they went for 1 2-hour walk together without their phones. Transformed their relationship. There was no underlying problem. It was the screen time that was distracting them from what was truly important. Another impactful change you can make is to not bring those screens into your bedroom. Look, I get it's hard. I get that it's tempting. But you've got to understand that the brain is what we call an associative organ. The brain associates certain behaviors with certain locations. So if, for example, you do work emails on your phone in bed, your brain associates your bedroom and your bed with your work, which can make it harder to switch off. Not impossible, some people manage, but if you're struggling, that could be one of the reasons. Taking notifications off all of your apps. Life-changing. I did that maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I haven't looked back. It means if I pick up my phone to make a phone call, I don't know if I've got 20 emails or 0 emails. I don't know if I've got 20 Instagram notifications or 0 notifications because I've switched the notifications off. And that allows me to be in control of my technology rather than the technology being in control of me. On my podcast a couple of years ago, I spoke to Professor Laurie Santos from Yale. She shared some research with me saying that deciding to stay off social media can have a bigger effect on your happiness than earning $100,000 a year or marrying the love of your life. It's absolutely incredible. And that's why I'm trying so hard to persuade you and hopefully inspire you to go, you know what? Enough's enough. I'm sick of the fact that these smartphones are infiltrating every single aspect of my life. I'm going to make a change. And hopefully some of these changes will help you do that. And that's why I really want you to think about your own screen use. Is it affecting your health? Is it affecting your relationships? There was actually a study that I read in America last year, which showed that when kids went around a museum with their parents, the experience was completely different when the parents didn't have a phone with them. The parents enjoyed it more, the children enjoyed it more, and afterwards they felt there was a much more meaningful and deeper connection. Let's be honest. The quality of our relationships determines, in a huge part, the quality of our lives. And screen time, for many of us, is absolutely getting in the way. I'm delighted to announce that AG1, the daily health drink that has been in my own life for over 6 years now, have updated and improved their formulation based upon the latest science. And to celebrate, they're giving my audience a very special summer offer. Some of the upgrades include more magnesium, which supports muscle function and improves the ability of your nervous system to relax, and also 5 strains of bacteria instead of just 2 to reflect the latest advances in microbiome science. It also contains key nutrients like vitamin C, biotin, niacin, vitamin B6, riboflavin, thiamine, zinc, and folate in bioavailable forms the body can easily and readily utilize, maximizing their potential benefits. Nutrition can often seem really complicated. What diet should we be following? What supplements should we be taking? And I think that's one of the main reasons I really like AG1. They make it really simple for you to be the best version of you. Over 70 ingredients, 1 scoop, once a day for less than a cup of coffee. So if you want to support your health 7 mornings a week, get started with AG1, and right now we have a very special limited time summer offer worth £58, which is around $80 US. To get 10 free travel packs instead of the usual 5, and an awesome welcome kit containing your shaker, scoop, and canister with your first subscription, go to drinkag1.com/live more. So I hope this encourages you to think a little bit differently and think about what you can do to change that. Now, if we think about screen time and computers and laptops, it's all inward, right? We go in and we look. The opposite of that is outwardness, expansiveness. And that's what nature provides. Nature is the antidote. We know that nature, being in nature, is very, very good for us as humans. There's many reasons for that. There's a lot of research on something called fractals. Fractals are these geometric shapes that you only see in nature. You don't get them in man-made buildings or materials. You get them in rivers, trees, leaves, coastlines, bodies of water. And scientific research shows us that when a human eye looks at a fractal, levels of the stress hormone cortisol start to drop. Simply being in nature reduces your levels of stress. There's also research showing that even if you can't get into nature, simply looking at nature, looking at a picture of nature, will also lower your levels of cortisol. Maybe not to the same degree as actually being in nature, but they will lower them nonetheless. So how many doses of nature are you getting in your life? And look, I get it. Not everyone is lucky enough to live near really nice bits of nature. Some people live in very urban environments, in the middle of a city. I get it. If that's you, have a think, are there any green spaces near your house? Can you get out there for a walk? Even if you can't, is there a tree outside your window? I mentioned that just looking at a fractal can lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So even if you just looked out and stared at a tree, you're still going to get some benefits. So really do think about reducing your screen time in whatever way you can. Put some rules into your life about when you are going to look, when you're not going to look. I mentioned before bed, but also first thing in the morning. Can you do an hour without a screen in the morning? If not an hour, can you do 5 minutes? Even just 5 minutes first thing in the morning without any technology, just to be with yourself. Maybe you can read, do some breath work, some meditation, do some journaling, whatever it might be. Less screen time, more nature time, and your health and happiness will immediately start to improve. The next tip, which I have seen be profoundly transformative for my patients and for myself, is eliminating unnecessary choice in our lives. Now, this may sound a little bit counterintuitive, Why would you want to eliminate choice? Isn't choice a good thing? Isn't more choice even better? I get to choose what I want to do. And first of all, I want to just recognize here that some people are living lives where they have no control, they have no autonomy, they don't have enough choice. I do understand that. If that's you, then this tip may not apply. But if that's not you, and you are feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, anxious, you find that you're procrastinating, you can't make decisions, you can't move forward, you feel stuck, I bet that too much choice is playing a role. We have to make decisions on everything these days. Studies suggest that we're making over 35,000 choices a day. Other research says that we make over 220 choices a day on food alone. It's overwhelming. And one thing we really have to understand is that every time you're making a choice, it's taking up some of your cognitive capacity. You may have heard me talk in previous podcasts or in previous videos about something called micro-stress doses. Right? These are little hits of stress that in isolation we can deal with just fine. But when those doses go on top of one another, they build up, they mount up, they get us closer to our own personal stress threshold. And when we get to our threshold, that's when things go wrong. That's when we fall out with a work colleague. We have a row with our partner. Our back goes into spasm. Our neck starts to ache. And we often think it was the last thing that we did that was the problem. But it usually wasn't. It was the build-up of these micro-stress doses throughout the day. Every time you make a choice that doesn't matter, that's a micro-stress dose. You're getting yourself closer and closer to that personal stress threshold where things start to go wrong. And a simple way of keeping you away from that stress threshold is to make less choices, especially on the things that don't matter. You know, President Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys are famous people who are well known for wearing the same thing every single day so they can save their cognitive capacity for decisions that matter. Eliminating choice from your life will have so many benefits. You make better decisions when you don't have to choose on everything. There was some more research showing that for food companies, if they offer 28 flavors of a food product compared to 5 or under, sales go down. When they offer just 3, 4, or 5 flavors, sales go through the roof. Because if you've got choice, if you've got infinite choice, you're always wondering, did I make the right one? Would that other choice have been better? And often you then procrastinate and end up doing nothing. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times in the past when my wife and I, on a Saturday evening, once our children were in bed, would sit down on the sofa, put on Netflix with a view to watching something. The amount of times. An hour later, we still can't decide because of all the choice. Our moods are a little bit off and we decide to forget it. Too much choice, especially today, it is real. I'm not saying never choose. I'm saying choose when it matters. Look, I'm a doctor. So people's health is something that's very, very important to me. Now let's take something like, exercise. We know that moving our bodies more is better for us. It's better for our physical health. And many people now realize it's very good for our mental well-being as well. But what often happens, and I've seen this with so many patients over the years, what often happens is this. Let's say people are online. Let's say they're on Instagram. And they follow someone who says that yoga is amazing. They follow someone else who says Pilates is amazing. They follow someone else who says, I run and do 5Ks each week. Someone else does strength training. And it's overwhelming. They're like, yeah, God, that yoga sounds good, Pilates sounds good, running sounds good, walking sounds good, strength training sounds good. Which is the best one? And they try and weigh up the decisions. In the meantime, they're not doing anything. They're not moving their bodies. The truth is, they all have benefits if you do them. Most of us are better just picking one and doing it consistently, regularly. I honestly believe that variety is overrated. You can simplify your life in so many different ways by eliminating choice. In my patients, one of the commonest sources of stress for people who are trying to be healthy is asking themselves, what am I going to cook tonight? In this world of endless choice, what am I going to cook the family tonight? Well, one way out of that is to have a meal planner. Have the same meal, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Have a different meal and just repeat it week after week. You know what you're having. You don't have to decide at your weekly shop. It's simple. You know what you need on which day. Again, I want to emphasize that may not be something that's relevant in your life, but I'm pretty sure that too much choice is adding to your stress load in some way. So some simple things you can think about are, write a meal planner. Wear the same clothes every day. If you listen to podcasts, as I do, if you go on a podcast app now, right, and try and decide what to listen to, you've got limitless choice. There's something like 2 or 3 million podcasts there. How on earth are you meant to choose? It's actually quite stressful to look at them and go, what am I going to listen to? I've been in that boat before. Some of my favorite podcasts are, that episode looks good. That one looks good. Which one am I going to do? And even if you choose a good one, you still feel like you're missing out. So what I do now, I have 3 podcasts that I subscribe to. Just listen to them. I don't look at anything else. I've got 3 podcasts I subscribe to, which give me the content, the quality, and the variety that I want. And I just stick to them. They are good enough. Of course, there are other great podcasts out there, but those 3 work for me. If you're someone who also can't decide what film to watch on a Saturday evening, well, one thing I've started doing over the last years is when I get a recommendation from someone, whether it's on a podcast or a friend, I open up my notes app and I make a list. So if I'm ever sitting down in front of the television with time with my wife, I have a ready-made list of films that I want to watch. Now, these things, they sound really, really simple, but they are very, very effective. They simplify your life in so many different ways. I promise, if you start eliminating choice, unnecessary choice from your life, it's going to improve things. But if you're someone who likes to go out and eat in restaurants, do you have a favorite restaurant that you go to? I do. There's a cafe in my local town that I like going to. You know what? There's one meal there I really, really like. I just have it every time I go. Now, you may be someone who really values variety in your food. Okay, fine. That may not be the right choice for you, but for me, it is. For me, I don't even look. I go there, I say hi to the staff. I say, just the usual, please. If you're someone who drinks wine, let's say, and you go to a restaurant, do you spend ages trying to decide which one of these wines shall I have? Well, if you're a wine connoisseur and that matters to you, that may be a choice that matters. If you're not, and you just like the odd glass of red wine, maybe you make a rule. I always choose the second cheapest bottle on the menu. Whatever it might be, you've got to find what works for you. And we're now living in an era where there is infinite choice wherever we go, and it's causing us huge problems. The next tip that I want to share with you is truly life-changing. Arguably, this is the tip that's had the most impact on me over the past few years. The most impact on my health and also my happiness. And the tip is this: seek out friction. What does that mean? Friction is something we usually want to avoid. We want a calm, nice, relaxed life without Any friction. But friction can be your most powerful teacher. And I'm talking about social friction. How we interact with others plays a huge role in our health and our well-being. And a lot of the time we allow our interactions with others, which don't go the way in which we want, we allow it to affect us, overly affect us. If someone says something to us that we don't like, it then ruins our day. We take it personally. We generate emotional stress. And then we engage in behaviors like sugar or alcohol or doom scrolling that really we're doing to neutralize the emotional stress that we created. But there is another way. You can use every moment of social friction to learn something about yourself. You can use every bit of social friction you come across as a teacher. And when you do, you will feel empowered. You will feel in control of life rather than life being in control of you. Now, one of the tips I have for you to do this is to think about making everyone a hero. What does that mean? It means when something happens, let's say you're driving to work and someone driving another car cuts you up in traffic. Now, you could react negatively. You could get annoyed and start going, wow, that person shouldn't have a license. I can't believe they did that. Whatever it might be, whatever narrative you want to create. But how is that narrative helping you? It's not. It's generating emotional stress. You, by the way in which you are reacting, are generating emotional stress. And once you realize that that is a choice, you're empowered to change it. And that's where make everyone a hero comes in. What story do you need to create in your mind to make that person a hero? What could be going on in their life? Maybe they're a dad whose child was up last night with a cough or with earache, and they're exhausted and they're just trying to get to work. And they're worried that they're running late, and if they get to work late, they're going to lose their job. And so they then can't feed their family. Maybe they were just being unmindful. They didn't sleep well. They're worried. Maybe their parents are sick. If you were that person, you'd probably be doing the same thing. But you have a choice. And when you exercise the power of that choice regularly, you get better at it. 5-6 years ago, I would have struggled with this. I would have felt that the way I feel is because that person behaved in that way. But I've learned since then that my response is down to me. I can change my response. And by practicing every day, let's say in the evening, you reflect on your day and you think about a bit of social friction. What happened today where I got a bit annoyed? What might have been going on in their life? How might I be able to make that person a hero? It sounds simple, but it's very, very effective. If you think it's going to be hard, try it. It's honestly not as hard as you think. Sure, in the moment, you may find it difficult. You may be in your car getting frustrated. Fine. We're all human. But maybe later that day, maybe in the evening, maybe at the weekend on a Sunday, let's say you're having a slow, relaxed day, reflect and go, wow, okay, I did react. I did generate emotional stress. I did have an extra glass of wine that evening because of that. How might I change that? How might I make that person a hero? You can do it. I've done it. Whereas now, usually my default is to do it in the moment. And it's very, very empowering. You know, one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had in my life was with a lady called Edith Eger. When I spoke to her on my podcast 2 or 3 years ago now, she was 93 years old. When she was 16, she was getting on with her life. She was at home with her parents and her sister. She grew up in Eastern Europe. They got a knock on the door and they were put on a train to Auschwitz concentration camp. Within 2 hours of getting there, both of her parents were murdered. And later that day, because she was a dancer, she was asked to dance for the senior prison guards. Now, there's so many things about that conversation I remember. But the first thing was that she said to me, Dr. Chatterjee, I never forgot the last thing my mother said to me. She said, Edie, nobody can ever take from you the contents that you put inside your mind. So she said to me, when I was dancing in Auschwitz, I wasn't in Auschwitz. In my mind, I was in Budapest Opera House. I had a beautiful dress on. There was an orchestra playing. There was a full house. In the hell of Auschwitz, she managed to reframe things in her mind. She chose a story that empowered her. Now, that's pretty incredible. When she said that to me, I hadn't heard anything like that. Then she said to me, when I was in Auschwitz, Dr. Chatterjee, I started to see the prison officers as the prisoners. They weren't living their life. In their minds, they weren't free. In my mind, I was free. It was really, really powerful. And one of the final things she said to me, I have never forgotten. I pretty much think about it every single day. She said, Dr. Chatterjee, I have lived in Auschwitz, and I can tell you, the greatest prison you will ever live inside is the prison you create inside your own mind. That's what we all do. We go around the world. We get on with our lives, and someone maybe at the coffee shop steps in front of us in the queue. They probably had never even seen us. It was an accident. But we create a mental narrative that they were being inconsiderate and they should have known.
Now, I'm a huge fan of Vivo barefoot shoes. I've been wearing them for about 12 years now. And one of the main reasons I love them is because when I'm wearing Vivos, I feel fully connected to the ground beneath my feet. What do we want? We want feet that move naturally. And because Vivos are wide, thin, and flexible, your foot can move in the way that it's meant to. A lot of modern shoes are stiff, they're narrow. They start to manipulate the way your foot functions. Whereas in Vivos, your feet could do what they're meant to do. And that means they help your feet become stronger. There was this trial that showed within 4 months of wearing Vivos, your feet are around 60% stronger. Your feet are your foundation, and when you've got problems in your feet, it goes all the way up the chain. It can go to your ankle, to your knee, to your hip, to your back, and even to your shoulder and neck. And as a doctor, I have seen back pain, hip pain, and knee pain actually start to get better when people start to wear barefoot shoes. To get 20% off your first order, go to vivobarefoot.com/live more.
We generate emotional stress within ourselves. We do it everywhere. What about an email from your boss that you don't like? You get frustrated. My boss should know better. I've worked at this company for years. They should know better than to email me like that. I know what I'm doing, whatever it is. You are generating emotional stress. And you can actually reframe that situation with practice. Now, I want to make something really clear. I'm not saying that you should put up with poor behavior. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you can develop the skill of staying emotionally neutral and really understanding that your response comes from within you, you will start to change your life. Let's say you don't react to that email. Let's say that email comes, you take a beat and you go, wow, isn't that interesting? My boss doesn't normally send me an email like that. I wonder what's going on in their life. I wonder if any of their relationships are under strain. I wonder if my boss's boss is putting pressure on them. If you approach it with curiosity as to what might be going on, how can I reframe this to tell myself a happiness story rather than a story that causes me harm? You're going to be better emotionally regulated. Your lifestyle behaviors are going to be much better, and you're going to be better able to change things. You're going to be better able to not send a rash email back that you then regret, And the following day, you're going to be able to go up to your boss, perhaps, and say, hey, listen, yesterday you sent me an email. Is everything okay? Like, it came across as quite rushed and as though you didn't value me. I don't know if that's just what you meant. Your boss may say, hey, look, I'm really sorry. I was in such a mad rush. I didn't mean any of it. I just fired it out quickly before a meeting. I'm so sorry. Or it may be that your boss really did behave poorly. But you can then say, listen, I think I work hard. I don't think that was called for. Whatever it might be. But the key point I'm trying to get across, and why this has transformed my life and the lives of many of my patients, is because so often we feel as though we're a victim to life. We think that the way we feel is down to other people, and when other people start behaving better, I'm going to be okay. But the problem is, if you're waiting for the world around you to behave in a certain way in order for you to feel good, you could be waiting a very long time. Now, I know this may sound scary, it may sound challenging. I promise you, if regularly you ask yourself, what bit of social friction came up in my life that I reacted to? How might I react differently? Over time, you will start to change things. And really, what has helped me the most is that conversation with Edith Eger. If ever I'm stewing over something in my own life, if ever I think, no, I can't reframe that. That was really bad. They shouldn't have done that. You know what? I think about Edith in Auschwitz. And I think, Rongan, if she could reframe things in Auschwitz, you can probably reframe this in your own life. So I've used that as inspiration. Now, just a quick note. I understand that many people have got really tough lives, and there's a lot of toxic behavior out there. This whole idea about reframing things to help you, I'm not really talking about serious traumatic events such as domestic violence. I just want to make that really, really clear. I'm generally talking about the things that come up in day-to-day life that we allow to affect our inner well-being and our emotional states. And if you can master this, even if you get 10% better at this than you currently are, you will start to feel much more in control of your life. That in turn is going to help your health and your happiness. The final tip I want to share is talk to strangers. We know that the quality of our relationships is important, with our friends, with our family, with our loved ones. Those close, intimate relationships, yes, are a very, very important predictor for our health and our well-being. But it's not just the relationship we have with the people close to us. It's also the relationship we have with that wider social world. We're all part of this big, broad human family, and sometimes we forget that. Psychologists have found that we have a network within our brain called the sociometer. And what's the job of the sociometer? It's to constantly scan our social world for threats. So if we're not getting positive social feedback from our social world, we can feel anxious, we can feel afraid, our self-esteem starts to go down. But when we get positive social feedback from the world around us, a smile from the person we walk past, a thank you from the barista in the coffee shop, a nice word you exchange with the supermarket attendant, whatever it might be, when you get those positive signals in your social environment, that sends a message to your sociometer in your brain that everything's okay. You feel content and in control. There was this really great study I remember reading in 2021 by the psychologists, Paul Van Lang and Simon Columbus, and they found that positive interactions with strangers help us serve basic needs such as feeling connected, appreciated, along perhaps with the realization of personal growth in ourselves. And their advice was for people to initiate brief interactions, even a smile, to strangers, because doing so supplies us with a critically important social nutrient that they call vitamin S. I mean, isn't that great? We often talk about taking our vitamins for our physical health, but this It's about vitamin S, the social vitamin, because that's who we are. We're social animals. Many of us are realizing more and more in our modern world, we're becoming more and more isolated. I mentioned before about being in a coffee shop and not looking around, looking at your screen. Yeah, I mentioned the default mode network, the impact of screens on our sleep. But what about the impact on loneliness and isolation? What happens when these micro-moment opportunities for connection are being lost? The more you can interact with strangers, and I'm not talking about a deep and meaningful chat. I'm simply talking about looking at people, looking them in the eye, smiling at them. Sure, if you're an extrovert like me, it's going to feel easier. But the research shows us that even for introverts, if you can talk to strangers or interact with strangers in some way, you're going to feel better. In a coffee shop, can you start saying hi? If you feel nervous, can you smile at the barista, say thanks? It gets easier the more you do it. But what's really interesting is how our brains work against us. Social interaction, whether it be with close friends and colleagues and family, or whether it be with strangers, is very powerful. But often our brain is trying to talk us out of it. There was some great research done in Chicago by Professor Nick Epley, where he studied commuters. And he basically took these commuters into 3 groups. One group were told to keep themselves to themselves, not interact with others. One group was asked to do what they would usually do. And the third group was asked to do something quite shocking and radical these days. Reach out to someone, say hello, and start a conversation. Now, before the test began, he asked all of the participants how they would feel if they were asked to do the third option, to reach out, say hello, and strike up a conversation. And they basically thought they wouldn't like it. They'd feel less content and less happy. Interestingly enough, afterwards, every single person in that group who did reach out, they felt better, they felt happier afterwards, and that happiness lasted for the duration of the day. But also really interestingly, they were asked how many of the people that we reach out to are going to enjoy being reached out to. And they predicted that only 40% would actually enjoy it. Afterwards, when asked, it was 100% of them. People liked reaching out and talking to others, and the people who were spoken to enjoyed the fact that that had happened. Now, that was just one study in Chicago, but it's been replicated in many different cities around the world, including in London. Now, I get it. You've got to be respectful. Some people will not want to be disturbed. Some people will be using their time on their commute to catch up with some work or listen to some music. But we can start to read these social signals. The point I'm trying to make is, as we're becoming more and more isolated, more and more insular, we go outside, we put our headphones on, we don't look at others, we don't interact with others, and we wonder why so many of us are struggling with anxiety and depression and low moods. We're social animals, right? We need to interact with other people, of course, in a safe fashion. I'm not saying go up in a dark street, someone you don't know, and make conversation with them, but in a coffee shop, on a train, at work, when you're out for a walk. These are opportunities where you can practice interacting with strangers. So really, I want you to consider taking this seriously. I know you may feel a little bit scared, a little bit apprehensive, but like with anything, you can start small. It could be that later on today or tomorrow, if you go to a cafe to buy a coffee, if you feel nervous, could you just look at the barista in the eye and smile? Could you just say a thank you? When you're in a queue in a cafe, instead of getting frustrated that you have to wait, could you reframe it and go, wow, this is an opportunity for me now to practice a bit of positive social feedback. It's an opportunity for me to send my brain, my sociometer, a powerful signal. I mean, some of the things I've shared today are a little bit counterintuitive. You may not be expecting them, especially from a doctor. But I found these tips are incredibly powerful. I figured out over 2 decades of medical practice that these are the tips and techniques that really move the needle. These are the bits of advice that help people feel better about themselves and then help them make better decisions, which in turn improves their health and happiness.
Is it really possible to isolate 5 minutes and for happiness and health?
Yeah, 100%. Look, it sounds a bit like a gimmick, doesn't it? 5 minutes. But if I think about my own life and how I've managed to look after my brain, my body, my heart, whilst being, married, 2 young children, busy job, as well as my job as a medical doctor. I write a book a year, I host a podcast. I also, for many years, have cared for my elderly parents, right? So I get what it feels like to be busy, but I've always found a way to look after myself through that busyness. And one of the things I always found with patients is that it will always say to me, Rongan, I don't have time. I want to be healthy, but I don't have time. I thought this really interesting because let's take toothbrushing as an example. We kind of know that if we brush our teeth for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, which hopefully everyone listening to the show right now does.
Yes, please do that.
We know that 4 minutes a day of toothbrushing, generally speaking, is going to look after our dental hygiene for life. Sure, you're going to have a checkup and you may need some polishing and cleaning or whatever, but by and large, what we don't do is go, I'm too busy on Monday. I don't have time for my brushing. Work's busy. I've got to pick the kids up, right? Tuesday, Wednesday. We don't do that and then go, at the weekend on Sunday, I'm going to do a 1 hour deep clean on my teeth. We don't do that. Anyone listening now knows that sounds ridiculous. Yet when it comes to behavior change for our health, for our brains, right? We make it too difficult. We make it really hard. People think that 5 minutes is not enough, so they stop doing anything that's going to help them. And this is why they try and go for like a 1 hour walk at the weekend or a 1 hour yoga session. Nothing wrong with that. But in my view, not a substitute for daily practices that can help you. And these practices don't need to take long. Just like toothbrushing can take 4 minutes a day, I do a strength workout, every single day. I haven't missed a day for maybe 3 or 4 years now.
Wow.
And I would argue it has nothing to do with motivation. It's because I've applied the principles of behavior change into my life, right? And a lot of the time we don't follow those principles, those rules when it comes to ourselves, right? So I'll explain the behavior first, right? How do I do this? Well, I have a morning routine, which we can maybe get into if you want to. But one component of that morning routine is a 5-minute strength workout, right? So how do I do that? Well, there's 2 rules of behavior change. I mean, in the book, there's my 6 rules, right? But the 2 rules that I think I'd love to share with people are, number 1, you've got to make it easy.
Yeah.
Right. So why do you have to make it easy? You and me are both good friends with Professor BJ Fogg, world leading expert in behavior change from Stanford. We had a great chat a few years ago because what was really great about our conversation was that the things that I had figured out through seeing patients, he figured out through research. So our conversation together was a beautiful kind of meeting of clinical experience from me and scientific research from BJ, and we basically came to the same conclusion that these small habits done consistently are how most people make changes, right? So the reason I do my workout every day is because it's not a 1 hour workout. It's not a 30-minute workout. It's 5 minutes. Even on my busiest days, I can't say I don't have time, right? I do have 5 minutes. So what do? One of the things I do in my morning routine is I come into my kitchen and I make coffee. Now, I'm very particular with how I make coffee. I like the ritual around it. I like a specific type of coffee, right? So I get out my French press, I weigh out my coffee, I pour in the water, and I put a timer on my phone for 5 minutes because that's how long I like it to brew for. Now, in those 5 minutes, Jim, I don't go on email, I don't go on Instagram, I don't scroll the news, right? In the 5 minutes whilst I'm waiting for the coffee, I do a strength workout in my pajamas. Right, now this is really important. Why do I do it in my pajamas? Well, I've made it about as easy as possible, right? I'm in my kitchen, I've come down, I'm in my pajamas. I've got a dumbbell and a kettlebell sitting in my kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes it's body weight, sometimes I just do a few exercises with the kettlebell. But before you know it, 5 minutes is up. Then I put them down and I'm rewarded with my beautiful hot cup of coffee. Right, so why does that work? Well, number one, I've made it easy. Now, you've got to make it easy because, one of the problems, and I've seen this with patients over and over again, we overly rely on motivation. Right, and motivation is important. And I know in your book, Limitless, you talk about motivation. It's one of your M's, right? So I get that. But I think we overly rely on motivation. And the scientific research shows us that motivation never stays up forever, right? That, BJ calls it the motivation wave, right? Motivation comes up, motivation goes down. So here's the reality that most people, I don't think, are applying in their life. If you make something difficult to do, you will do it when your motivation is high. Okay? What's the example of this? New Year, right? People wake up on New Year's Day and they decide this year's going to be different. This year, I'm going to go spinning 4 times a week, right? And they do it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They actually get it done. But then 3 weeks in, something happens. Work's busy. In the UK, it's raining or it's cold, it's dark. And you just can't be bothered because it's an hour's spinning class. So before you know it, the start of February, it's something you used to do. So the problem is that you do the behavior when motivation's high, but when motivation's low, if the behavior is difficult, you don't end up doing it. But if you make the behavior easy to do, you'll do it when your motivation's high. You'll also do it when your motivation's low. So the reason I do a 5-minute workout is because I can never say to myself, Rongan, you don't have time. You don't have time for 5 minutes. So that's one of the reasons that habit has stuck now for almost 4 years. I've made it easy. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is, where do you put that behavior that you want into your life? A lot of people don't give this much thought. They just say, I want to work out. I want to meditate. Okay, great. That's a great intention. There's all kinds of benefits for our brains when we do that. But they don't think specifically about, where am I going to put this in my life? Now, any behavior we do needs a trigger, right? Any behavior needs a trigger. So a trigger could be our memory, right? I could remember, hey, I had a message with Jim a few weeks ago. We said on this day we were going to get together and record. Right. Memory works. It just happens to be the most unreliable trigger that there is. So I don't rely on my memory for important things like meeting you in my podcast studio. Most people listening don't. They have their Google Calendar, or it will be written down, scheduled, the important things in their life. Right, so memory is a trigger, just very unreliable. So what's a better trigger than memory? A better trigger would be some sort of post-it note, like a post-it note on your fridge, or a notification on your phone saying, hey, in an hour's time, you've got to meet Jim, right? That also works, but the very best trigger for a behavior, as evidenced by the scientific research on behavior change, is when you stick that new behavior on to an existing habit. Right? So your audience may have heard you talk about this before because it works. Mm-hmm. Right? An existing habit is something you are automatically doing without much conscious thoughts.
Like making coffee.
Like making coffee, right? So in the morning, I don't need a notification to remind me to make coffee. I don't need my assistant to phone me at 5:30 or 6 a.m. say, hey, Rongan, don't forget to make your coffee. I don't need my wife to remind me. No, it's a habit. I'm going to do that. So therefore, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to enjoy it. Right? So therefore, by sticking my workout onto my coffee habit, it happens. That's why it happens Monday to Sunday, because I don't miss a day on drinking my coffee. It's part of my morning routine. I love the ritual around it. It's quiet time for me. So I've made it easy. Again, I don't have to wear any special sports gear. I don't need to put on my running shorts. I do it in my pajamas. What else have I done to make it easy? I've set my environment up to help me. So I used to do just body weight, But then a few years ago, I put a kettlebell and a dumbbell in the kitchen. And I remember my wife and I had a conversation. She said, are you going to leave this stuff out in the kitchen? Can't we just put it in the cupboard or put it in the garage? And we actually had a conversation. I said, hey, babe, listen, if I put that in the cupboard or put it in the garage, I'm not going to use it. But if it's in the kitchen, I'm going to use it all the time. And again, it's one of those things. Out of sight is out of mind. Even if I pick up the weight just to move it out the way so I can get to my coffee, by having it there, I'm also visually triggering myself each morning to not forget to do it. So it's very simple. But let's be really clear about this. How many people listening to your show, Jim, know that moving their bodies, doing some sort of strength training is going to help their brain? It's going to improve blood flow. It's going to improve circulation. It's going to enhance the release of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factors. I know you've spoken about that many times in the past, right?
Yes, I hope all of our listeners know all of that already.
Right, so they know that.
Yep.
But some of them, despite knowing that, won't be moving as much as they want. They'll think, oh man, I didn't get my movement in today, right? I want to. Oh, I hear, I've just heard the latest research. We start losing muscle mass. As soon as we hit 30, our muscle mass starts to go down each year. We know that the amount of lean muscle mass we have is one of the main predictors of our longevity, right? And our health as we get older. Yet despite knowing that, they still think about strength training as something they're going to do in the future when the time is right, when they've got time, when somehow miraculously things change, when the kids are always in bed on time, the email inbox is not going to overflow. It ain't going to happen, right? So going back to your original question, is it realistic to change your life in 5 minutes? Well, I would say yes, because I've done this thousands of times with my patients. When I've seen what works and what doesn't work. It's over 2 decades now that I've been in practice. So I've seen tens of thousands of patients. And I've seen very few people, in my experience, manage to turn their lives around completely overnight. Like very few completely do an overhaul where I'm going to go an hour's jogging every day, 20 minutes of meditation every day. I've rarely seen it happen. The only time I've seen it happen, Jim, is when there's been a significant life experience, something like a job loss, or there's been a death, or someone's girlfriend or boyfriend has split up with them. Something really big and emotional that has caused them to change everything. Sure, you can change your life overnight when that happens, but apart from that, I just haven't seen it that much. I've seen that these small changes actually are the ones that add up. So in my life as a busy doctor, as a busy father, as a busy son, right, as a busy husband, I haven't missed a 5-minute strength workout a day. So that means, what does that mean? That means in a week, I'm doing minimum 35 minutes of strength training, right? And multiply that over 4 years. That's a lot of strength training. Right? But I don't need motivation. I've set up a system whereby it happens. Now, the beautiful thing about 5 minutes is that, sure, some days it'll be 4 minutes, right? But on some days, I'll have time, I'll be feeling good, it'll be 10 minutes, right? But the requirement to myself is that I at least do something whilst my coffee is brewing. And then, BJ talks about rewarding yourself for these behaviors. Well, I get the beautiful reward of a hot cup of coffee the way I want it, and then I continue my morning routine. But just one more thing, Jim, on that, which I really want people to understand is business, big business, understand the rules of behavior change, right? They understand it and they apply it. So when Amazon went to one-click ordering, right, and I think that was about 10 years ago now, estimates say their profits went up by $300 million a year, right? Now, why is that? Well, think back to before one-click ordering. What did you have to do? You scanned, you chose what you wanted. Then you have to go to a next screen. And in the next screen, you have to, confirm a few more things. Then the next one, you type in your card details. And the next one, you finally place order, right? 3 or 4 steps that you have to take before you can place the order. Each step is an opportunity to pull out or to procrastinate and not make that order, make that purchase. They make it easy. Before you've blinked now, before you can click, you've got something arriving that evening.
Yes.
Right? So Amazon use it. I'm not having a go at them. right? They're a business. They're doing what they need to do to maximize profits, right? Netflix and YouTube. Why does one video or one episode go into the next episode? They understand behavior change. They understand that if at the end of that episode, if before you've decided it's midnight, I need to go to bed now, I've got work tomorrow morning, I need to get my sleep, it's good for my brain. If whilst you're trying to make that decision, they have sucked you into the next one, they know you're going to stay watching. So the point I'm trying to make is business knows how to use these rules to get you to buy more or consume more. But humans, when it comes to making positive lifestyle behavior choices for ourselves, we don't apply those rules. We think it's got to be a 30-minute meditation session. It's got to be 1 hour of yoga. We think 5 minutes can't make a difference, but it absolutely can. And hopefully that's just one of many examples.
I love it. And that's a mindset shift as well. That belief, it's a lie that change can't happen or consistency can't happen in just a handful of minutes. I do believe that if they're using willpower and they're persistent, maybe they could achieve it. But if they're consistent, then they get to keep it.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not that that's the only thing I do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I will have a longer workout later on in the day or go for a run. But for me, those are optional extras.
Yeah.
These 5-minute habits, just like brushing my teeth, it's not optional. It happens 7 days a week. That strength workout happens 7 days a week. And I know whoever's listening to this and they feel they're too busy to work out, right? I have adopted this approach with hundreds, if not thousands of my patients. And I've seen over and over again, for the busiest people, this works really, really well. So it's not like, I'm not saying don't do anything else. Anything else is, it's an optional extra. But just like I brush my teeth every day, I do a strength workout every day. Now, there's 2 other things I do as part of my morning routine. Now, why do I do it in the morning? I share the philosophy that you share, I think, which is the start of the day and the end of the day are really, really important. If we start the day allowing the world to dictate what we think, what we do, then I think it's no wonder that we end up in a reactive state. It's no wonder we end up doing things that we never wanted to do.
Yeah.
We don't realize, I think many of us don't realize how important those opening minutes of the day are. Again, for people who say they're busy, right? I'll maybe share a story in a minute about one of my patients who was a single mother. I think she had 2 kids from recollection. She would always be rushing around, but I helped her create a 5-minute morning routine that worked for her, that really helped lower her stress levels and then reduced how many skin outbreaks she was getting, because I strongly felt that stress was driving a lot of her skin problems. And so I have this little framework for a morning routine that maybe I'll share with your audience.
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
Again, maybe it sounds ironic as a doctor. I don't like giving set prescriptions to people because I understand we're all different. We all have different preferences. We all have had different experiences with different lifestyle behaviors. We all have different cultural backgrounds. So I like to create frameworks that people can then personalize for themselves. So the framework I use to create my morning routine that I use with my patients to help them create theirs is what I call the 3 M's. Okay. The first M is mindfulness. The second M is movement. And the third M is mindset. Right. So let's start with the first M, mindfulness. Some form of activity that you enjoy that's going to help you be more mindful. Okay, so it could be meditation, it could be breath work, it could be journaling if you want, like some form of mindful practice. Now, for me at the moment, it's breath work, right? So I'll get up. Now, I'm early to bed and early to rise. That's a choice I've made, particularly since I've had children, because I realized very early on into my career as a father that I'm a better human being, I'm a better dad, I'm a better husband, I'm a better doctor when I've had time to myself each morning before the family are up and about. I think there's some self-awareness there that I've learned that I function better when I get up early and have time to myself. So I always get up early. These days it's about 4:30 or 5. Again, I'm not saying people have to do this. I don't use an alarm clock. I naturally wake up then. And so I'll come downstairs and I'll do some breath work. Now, I'm at a point in my life where I do have a bit more time. So it is more than 5 minutes now for me. But it wasn't for many years. It was just 5 minutes. And I want to make sure people understand that, because you can get benefit in probably less than 5 minutes even. So let's say it was 5 minutes of breath work. Okay. And there's many practices out there. The breathing practice I love is something that I call the 3-4-5 breath, where you breathe in for 3, you hold for 4, and you breathe out for 5. Okay, the 3-4-5 breath. Anytime that your out breath is longer than your in breath, you help to switch off the sympathetic part of the nervous system, the kind of stress state, and you help to promote the parasympathetic state, the relaxation state, right? There's a million breath practices out there. You don't have to do this one, but for many years, this is what I did, okay? People should find the ones that they enjoy, that work for them. So the first M is mindfulness, right? So you choose a practice. The second M is movement, right? So I just shared already my 5-minute movement practice whilst my coffee's brewing, right? So I've done my breath work in the living room. I come into the kitchen, make my coffee, do my workout whilst the coffee's brewing. And then that leads me nicely onto the third M, which is mindset. All mindset means for me, you could do affirmations if you want, but what I like doing, I'm a big fan of reading. I like to read a positive or an uplifting or a thought-provoking book first thing in the morning. So I've got the reward of my nice cup of black coffee that I've made the way I like it. I've always got 3 or 4 books kicking around my kitchen and my living room, because I don't want procrastination. I don't want to come down in the morning and go, oh, where are the books? Oh, which one shall I read today? You know, like I said with Amazon and the order, every decision you have to make, right, it's a reason to procrastinate. It's a reason to pull out. So I've made the choice to read something. And this happens every day. This happens 7 days a week, right? Again, I've automated it. So I don't need to think. And that's why it happens every day. So again, I'd encourage people to, if they find it useful, and of course, some people, it's not going to resonate with them, but for people who do, give it a try. Try that 3M practice in the morning. See if you can personalize it for yourself. And just to close the loop on that 42-year-old single mother who said she didn't have time, I taught her the 3Ms. And you know what she did? She did 1 minute of 3-4-5 breathing. So that was for her mind. She did 2 minutes of yoga. She just chose some of her favorite moves. 2 minutes of yoga. And then for the final M, mindset, she did 2 minutes of affirmations. That was it. 5 minutes total. 5 minutes total, right? And what that did is it showed her how she could feel. She never knew. She didn't experience that feeling of calm and control. And she did that first thing in the morning. 5 minutes, skin got better, stress started going down. And a few months later, she then expanded that into, I think, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So the reason 5 minutes is so powerful, A, it works in and of itself. But once you realize how good you can feel with 5-minute practices, very quickly you want more, right? So you naturally start to do more. So yeah, I coming back to your first question, can you change your life in 5 minutes? Absolutely. Yeah, that's positive proof of it. Well, you want to challenge people who are listening or watching this right now? What can they do? What do you want to challenge them? And they'll maybe make a post. They could tag you. They could tag me in it and share what they do. Yeah, the first thing I ask them to reflect on is, because people who listen to your show, Jim, are going to be very motivated in general, I would say. They're wanting to make changes, positive changes in their life. Right, so I want everyone listening to think back now and go, what was the behavior I tried to bring into my life that I wasn't able to make stick? And then think about those 2 rules that I've just outlined. Number 1, you've got to make it easy. Number 2, you've got to stick it onto an existing habit. I bet that the majority of people who weren't able to make that behavior stick were not following at least one of those rules. Of course, not in every case, but in most cases I found they made the behavior too hard, or they hadn't been intentional about where to put it. So first of all, reflect on that. And then I guess the challenge would be, what's one thing, right? Let's not make it difficult. Yeah. Right. There's all kinds of lifestyle behaviors you're going to hear about on this podcast, on Instagram, on social media. The problem is we've got too much information these days. It's like, oh, I need to do yoga and Pilates and martial arts and this. You can't do it all, right? Pick one thing and apply those 2 rules. Break it down to something really, really simple and intentionally stick it onto an existing habit. Maybe borrow my 5-minute kitchen workout if you want, right? If you want to, you want to see what I do, there's a video on YouTube called 5-minute kitchen workout, right? But it doesn't matter what you do your favorite moves, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And then, maybe tag you and me on social media, let us know what you're doing.
I love it.
That's all you have to do. And so just one more thing, Jim, I just want to say, for people who are skeptical about 5 minutes, I spoke to an amazing psychotherapist on my show called Julia Samuel once. And she said to me, Rongan, your book, Feel Better in 5, actually saved one of my patients' lives. I said, what do you mean, Julia? She said, I had a patient who was really bad, suicidal, in a really, really dark place. Everything felt too much for that individual. And I gave them your book. And I said, just pick one thing. And she said it was unbelievable because actually, by making it so simple, he actually started to do them, right? He started off with 5 minutes and, bit by bit, he made other changes and now is doing very well, right? But that was really profound for me because I knew 5 minutes worked because I've seen it over and over again with myself and with my patients. But when Julia told me that about one of her suicidal patients, I just want to share that because I know someone listening will know someone who is not doing well. So please do share those techniques and principles with them. It really doesn't need to be hard. If you found those tips useful, I think you are really going to enjoy this video all about burnout, what causes it, and what you can do about it. One of the worst things in life is when you've got no energy. Every day feels like you're on a treadmill. I've been a medical doctor now for over 21 years, and this is one of the commonest complaints I see